Hello, I'm Richard Hole from Ash Lane Consulting. Welcome to this Introduction to Personally Administered Items webinar. The aim is to give you the information you need to know what can be claimed and how these items lead to prescribing drugs income for the practice. The webinar is relevant for everyone in both dispensing and non-dispensing practices who are involved in the management of personally administered items and to the clinicians who give these items to patients. This is part of a program of training that is available for the various roles within the practice, and I'll provide you with some more details about these courses at the end of the webinar. Okay, so let's get started. The course objectives then are to understand what personally administered items are and how they result in prescribing drugs income. So specifically, I'll define what is meant by a personally administered item. I'll explain how you can identify the personally administered items that are relevant for your practice. And I'll explain how these result in the payment of a prescribing drugs payment if they are successfully claimed. And I'll put this into context by telling you about the importance of this income to the practice. Let's start with some definitions. First, personally administered items. We define this as the drugs, medicines and devices purchased by the practice and used on patients for which the practice is reimbursed. They include vaccines, anaesthetics, coils, cancer drugs, emergency drugs, neuroleptics, some sutures and many more. But I'm afraid you can't just use this simple definition, as not everything you use is claimable. For example, only certain sutures are claimable, and whilst 6mm by 75mm Steri-Strips are claimable, 3mm ones are not. And many other items you purchase and use are also just not claimable. For example, prednisolone tablets, salbutamol nebules, soluble tablets, dressings, they're all ineligible. They're just a cost to the practice. And anything that you have free issued to the practice, such as your Nimemrix, cannot be claimed. You can only claim for things you've purchased. So it's important to fully understand what makes something claimable. So we need to go right back to the GMS Statement of Financial Entitlement. And here it is. Here's the extract that relates to these personally administered items. It lists a number of categories. First, vaccines, anaesthetics and injections. So the vaccines includes things such as your typhoid or typhus vi injections. But equally, a Vivotif capsule is claimable. It's a vaccine, even though it's not an injection. Anaesthetics includes lidocaines, but also things like Emla-Cream. It's a topical anaesthetic. It's still an anaesthetic, so it's claimable. And if we look at things like Minims, well, a Minims eye wash with fluorescein is not claimable, as there's no anaesthetic component. However, a Minims with tetracaine, Minims with proximeticaine, or Minims with oxybuprocaine, they're all claimable because of the lidocaine content. And sodium chloride, if we consider sodium chloride as a wash, it's not claimable, but if it's injected, then that makes it claimable. It's an injection, so it becomes claimable. And water for injections, one of the cheapest items you can buy, it's still claimable. It's used, for example, when mixing with benzyl penicillin. And in fact, in that scenario, both the water and the benzyl penicillin are claimable. So that's just some of the items that come under the first category A. So moving on to paragraph B. Now this looks complicated, the diagnostic reagents, Dick test, Schick test and so on, but I think you can relax because in all the practices we've worked at, we've never actually come across anybody using any of these. So moving on to then intrauterine contraceptive devices, so your IUCDs and other items. So this includes your Kylenas, Mirenas and other IUCDs that are all claimable. Moving on to pessaries, vaginal pessaries, claimable. And then moving on to sutures. Now, there are many sutures that are claimable, but not all. So in this case, you've certainly got to check the individual ones that you're using. The sutures also includes some skin closing strips, so Steri-Strips, but again, not all. Firstly, they have to be 6mm by 75, and even then, it's only Omnistrip, Leukostrip and Steri-Strip that are claimable. Now that you know what makes an item a personally administered item, you can prepare a list of the PAIs for your practice. Now you might ask, can't we just refer to a generic list? Well, that just doesn't work, as there are over 3,000 items. And if you give a list like that to your clinicians, it's very unlikely it'll be very useful to them. So here's what we recommend you do. For non-dispensing practices, the easiest way to do this is to grab your invoices and to flick through them, highlighting with a highlighter the items you believe to be claimable. Then grab a clinician, get a nurse or a doctor just to help you identify and confirm which of those items you've highlighted are truly ones that meet that definition for personally administered items. For dispensing practices, that's not really feasible. So you might be able to get a list from your suppliers. For example, I know that AAH provide a report. And then the other way to do it is just to walk around the treatment rooms and speak to the nurses and doctors about the items that they are using in practice. So that should give you a list of about 30 to 40 items. You can then compare that with our list. If you go to our website, you can pull that off and then just look up your items against our list to confirm they are truly personally administered. Once you've done that, we're going to move on to the next step, which is looking at the refund rates to confirm how much you'll be paid for those items. To confirm an item is truly a personally administered item and to check its current refund rate, the resource to use is the NHS Dictionary of Medicines and Devices. First, to find the site, the easiest way is to start with Google and just type DM plus D. That'll bring up the results, and then the one you're looking for is the DM plus D browser. And that brings up the following website. Type in the product name you're interested in, and I would just say put the first part of the name, such as Depomed for Depomedrone. Click on AMP, and it'll bring up the various results against that search. The one you're looking for then, when you found it, don't click on View, click on the plus sign. And then once it brings up the different packages, in this case one vial, then you've got the information you need. And this is the phrase you're looking for, attracts an administration fee. That means it's claimable. It's a personally administered item that is claimable. And further down the page, you'll see the refund rate. In this case, £8.96. It's an excellent site and it's the one we use, and we do check it regularly for the latest prices as they can change from month to month. Okay, you've now checked the refund rates for the personally administered items used in your practice. That's a big step forward, but please be aware that knowing what's claimable isn't sufficient in itself to ensure the practice claims for everything it's due. In our experience working with practices, where they are underclaiming, only 10% of that is because of the items being missed that they didn't know about. The other 90% is for items that they did know were claimable, but the inherently complex process just means that items are being missed throughout the process. We address all these issues in the work we do with our clients, and I also describe an improved approach for managing personally administered items in the other training modules that are available. I'll now move on to how the personally administered items result in an income for the practice. Each month, an FP34 submission is completed, and it's in two parts. There is what's known as the FP34 appendix, which lists all of the volume vaccines, and now these don't require individual prescriptions. But then for everything else, an FP10 prescription is included as well. So together they're sent off, and that's processed and valued and results 2 months later in the payment of a prescribing drugs payment. It appears on the open exeter statement, and I must point out that for a dispensing practice, this figure will also include the dispensary income as well. So I'm afraid for dispensing practices, you can't tell the difference between the personally administered and everything else at this stage. But the good news for non-dispensing is this figure is the amount that you've been paid as a result of your personally administered item claim. The way the prescribing drugs payment is calculated is as follows. I mentioned before that every item has its own NHS refund rate, and so the total of all of the items submitted together is the total basic price that is reimbursed. But there are a number of adjustments that are made. Firstly, a discount or an amount of money is deducted from that payment. This is a variable amount and it depends on the size or the amount of the monthly claim. But VAT is added back onto everything. And then the good news is that you get a dispensing fee for every item. Now this is what makes the whole process quite profitable for the practice, because no matter whether it's a very low cost item or a high cost item, they all attract the same dispensing fee. And the figures shown there are the maximum figure. The first one is for a non-dispensing practice and the second figure is for a dispensing practice. But do be aware that these figures are reviewed twice a year at the beginning of April and October. I want to finish by explaining the importance of the income you receive for your PAIs to the practice and why it's vital that you successfully claim for everything. The PAIs you purchase and use are a cost to the practice. However, the resulting payments from the claims means that they're a source of profit, as the income you receive includes the dispensing fees, and in total this is greater than the cost. From our work with practices, we know that if you claim for everything, then the profit margin is between 30 and 40%. That's additional money that the practice can use to fund other services. To put this into context, if we consider a 10,000 patient practice, the typical spend on their personally administered items will be around £40,000. The resulting income will be £60,000, resulting in a £20,000 that's left as profit for the practice. However, if the practice isn't successfully claiming for everything, the income will be reduced, but the costs will not. So for example, if the practice is underclaiming by just 20% of the items, the impact of this will be profits will be reduced by over half. That completes this introduction to personally administered items. As I mentioned at the start, knowing what's claimable is an important first step. But if you want to ensure that you're maximising your prescribing drugs income, you need to look at your end-to-end process. It's inherently complex, with many people involved, and there's no guidebook. It's difficult to find the information you need. So we've developed the Ash Lane methodology for managing personally administered items, and this is what we implement for our clients. We implement a range of tools to help at each stage of the process and enable you to track the items through the practice, from the point at which they're ordered, through their use by the clinicians, the raising of the claim and the eventual receipt of payment at the end of the process. Importantly, we introduce checks throughout to enable you to spot straight away if something has gone wrong or has been missed, so you can put in place corrective measures before any losses occur. We also put in place controls to ensure the payment received is correct, as errors are sometimes possible in the processing of the claim. Do please contact me to find out more about the services we offer and how we can help your practice. Additionally, you might like to do one of our other training courses, the details of which are all on our website. These are live courses, so even when they're delivered as a webinar, you're able to interact with the trainer and make sure you get all of your questions answered. Maximising prescribing drugs income is designed for the managers and partners of a practice, and we explain our end-to-end methodology and give you the tools so that you can implement it for your practice. In addition, there is a module for the FP34 administrators in which we explain in more detail the process for completing the FP34 submission accurately and efficiently. And the finance module for managers and the finance team goes into more detail about how the prescribing drugs income is calculated. This is important so you can forecast the income you're expecting, and importantly, you can check the payment you receive against your forecast to spot any discrepancies. I hope you found this webinar useful. Do please contact me if you've got any questions. Thanks very much.